giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here.
Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kristen. I'm the maker behind this little corner of the internet, Do So Knits, where I share with you how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. I'm a knitter and military spouse living in Denver, Colorado with my husband and our 2 animals. And like I mentioned, this is my little corner of the internet where I talk about all of my knitting. Today's video is episode 76 of my podcast, and in these I like to kind of go through all the finished objects that I have, anything that I'm working on, and any future projects that I might be planning. So I hope you have something cozy to drink. I am drinking currently just my final cup of coffee for the day. And it's a Sunday morning here in Denver. It's a little bit of a cold, I've gotten a little bit of like a cold spurt. That's not the right word. It's cold this week again. So today I'm wearing my Staffin Cardigan, which is a test knit I did for the crochet, and then I knit it in fisherman's wool in the oatmeal colorway. You can tell Ebony is very excited that I am podcasting today. And yeah, I hope you have something to drink, and we'll just go ahead and dive right into all of the knitting that I have. The only bit of admin that I have here at the beginning is I did not hear from the winner that I announced in episode 75 for the Salty Blonde sock set. So I have pulled a new winner today since it's been about a month since my last episode, and I feel like a month was a good amount of time to try to get in touch and to watch that video. So I have pulled a new winner, a random number draw from who entered in. It was episode 74, this Salty Blonde sock set. And so the new winner is Oliver, and your email starts with the letters MKV. You didn't put like a last name or anything, so I just want to make sure. So Oliver, if that is you, email starting with MKV, please send me an email. It's listed down below in the description box, dosoknits@gmail.com. Let me know your shipping information, and I will get this sent out to you as soon as possible. And thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and everyone who entered, thank you so much for all of your support. So that is the only admin I have. All right, and that is not gonna work, honey bun. Ebony loves when I sit and chat. She will ignore me all day long, but as soon as I work from home, I'm hybrid, so some days are from home and some days are in the office. Whenever I'm at home, she will ignore me, and then as soon as I am in a video meeting, she is on my desk, on my lap, wants to be involved. I think she thinks the talking is me like talking to her. So we've had to move her. She isn't completely locked out, but we're not gonna deal with the climbing on the mannequin. But anyway, we can just dive right into the finished objects that I have to share with you today. It's been about a month since my last podcast, and within that last month I've not had as much of a knitting mojo as I have had. I think because the weather is tempting to warm up, I'm a little more, I don't know. I've also just been doing a lot of jigsaw puzzles. It's been really scratching an itch lately. And so when I'm working on a puzzle, my completionist part of my brain really likes to kick in. And so I can sit and work on a jigsaw puzzle for hours. And so that has been honestly taking a lot of like my free knitting time recently because of the jigsaw puzzles I've been doing. But it's just been really scratching a nice itch, and I've been really enjoying it. So I do have progress on things to show you, but not like an astronomical amount for a month worth of time, I think. But I've really been enjoying what I've been working on. I've tried to not work on too many projects at a time, and I feel like that's been really nice as well. So yeah, the first finished object and only finished object that I have to share with you today is sitting on my little bust form here. This is my Miles shirt jacket by Ozetta. With this, I knit the size 4. It is a jacket type pattern. I kind of wanted it to be more of a cardigan, and so this is a size 4, roughly a 52-inch bust size. I have a 48-inch bust, so it's about 4 inches of positive ease at my full bust. My upper bust is about a 42, so about 10 inches of positive ease there, and I really am happy with this cardigan. So last time I was very close to finishing. I was really debating on what buttons I wanted to do, and I ended up posting an Instagram poll. I didn't even show these buttons last time. I ended up getting these from a friend who is getting rid of some of her crafting supplies, some things that she was going to take to a thrift store. Just kind of, you know, we tend to accumulate things sometimes, so sometimes it's nice to redistribute to your friends. So I ended up picking up these buttons from her, and I threw them in that Instagram poll kind of last minute. But they were like the overwhelming winner, and Shane even picked these buttons of the 3, and I think they work really well. It used 4 buttons total, and I only had 4 of these, so I thought that kind of worked out really well. I wasn't going to have like a pack of 6 and then have 2 left over and not be able to use them later, so that made me really happy. Yeah. I knit this in Kelborn woolens. In Lucky Tweed. It's an Aran weight woolen spun yarn, so it's very lightweight, and this cardigan is very lightweight. I love it for that. It's lightweight but warm, so it's been a really nice thing to just kind of throw on when I need it. It does call for buttons kind of on the front 2 panels, but because I wanted this to be a little more of a cardigan style, I just omitted the pockets completely. I looked at lots of project pages, and I just wasn't a fan of the ones with the pockets as much. And then another modification I made is you are supposed to knit this collar so that it's like 3 inches tall, and I just thought that looked too tall. I think that definitely leans more to like the jacket, more outer kind of layer, and I don't always like things super high on my neck. So I ended up knitting this to about 4 inches total, because you fold it over and then I think you're supposed to knit it together to fold it down. I just whip stitch, sew it down. So my whole collar here is about 2 inches high instead of 3. The other modification I made is I did steek this. So this is a drop shoulder. So how it's constructed is you cast on at the back shoulders. I sit cross-legged, so I had to put my feet down to spin her. My mannequin. Oh, wasn't sitting very great. Okay, so you cast on the back, and then you end up working increases to shape the shoulders, and then you work all the way down the arm opening, and it's a very long arm opening. And then you come back, you put your back stitches on hold, come back, pick up your left or right shoulder, knit down to the front opening. You do the same on the other shoulder, knit all the way down. And then once your armholes are done, because it's drop shoulder, then you knit in the round. Or you knit back and forth flat because it's a cardigan. In my head, thought this cardigan is a very long cardigan. And so I was like, well, I don't want to knit it flat. I want to knit it in the round. So at that point, I added a steek panel, and then I knit in the round. I added 7 stitches for my steek, 3 knits, 1 purl, and then 3 more knits. And then I knit that in the round with that steek panel until it was time to do the short row shaping at the bottom. So the bottom has this curved hem like this. So the bottom has this curved hem here, and when you're doing that, you do end up needing to work flat because you'll do short rows on the front, and then you do short rows across the back, and then short rows across the other front section in order to get these curved hems. I think that curved hem adds a really nice, because it is so long, it's like a nice little accent. I think it's really cute. But yeah, so then overall, I think it was only about maybe 6 inches of in the round knitting that I did. So in the future, I don't know if I would necessarily steek this cardigan, because like this cardigan, you could start your steek panel at the top because it's a ragland. I'd probably join it after the, I don't exactly remember when the short rows are, but essentially because the button band is all the way and it's not a drop shoulder, you're not really knitting flat, you could knit it in the round. And then this is just a rectangle all the way down. So this would have been, basically you would have steeked the entire cardigan. But because of this one's construction and short rows at the bottom, there wasn't a ton of in the round knitting to steek. So in the future, I probably wouldn't steek this one, but a cardigan like this, I would steek. I don't necessarily regret it. I did really enjoy just being able to knit in the round. It was really mindless for that section. And when I did do that steek, before I cut the steek, I knit my button bands. And then I did a zigzag stitch on either side of my steek because I had that purl stitch in the middle, so it was very easy to know which column I was going to cut. So I did a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine on either side of that purl stitch, cut the steek, and then on the inside of the sweater, I didn't use a ribbon or anything, I just tacked down the steek panel. I could add a ribbon or something, but it's not very long. So you can see right here, that is my steek panel. It's a little longer than 6 inches. It might be about 9 inches total, but overall for the whole cardigan, it's not a ton. And you can see it kind of just blends in, and I expect this to just felt over time. And this is the other side. Just like that. So that's my steek on the inside. And then you can see where it's that's where my steek ended. I just bound off those steek stitches, and then this is where I started knitting flat again for those short rows. And then when I did the buttons, I'll give you a nice little close-up. These are the buttons that I chose. They have this kind of cool like hexagonal shape to them. There are 4. I think they fit nicely on the button band. And I just used a little bit of embroidery thread in a brown to kind of match. Sew that on. And you can see I just do like a little knot in the back, and buttons are pretty easy. They sew on very quickly, but it took me about a week to decide what buttons I was going to do. I had the hardest time deciding, and that's why I went to Instagram and I finally made that decision, and then I finally sewed them on. This probably sat on the ground on my blocking mat for about a week because I basically just let it sit there while I was debating. And that's a little better look of kind of the short rows at the bottom. So I go from a mix of wanting to show it on the bust form, but then sometimes some of the details are harder to see. And so then this is the folded collar here, and then I think you're supposed to knit it together, but I always just do a whip stitch down because I think it just gives you a little more, when you do the knit together, you really have to make sure that the stitch that you are knitting with below is the exact same column, versus with this, I think it's a little easier. You can have a little more wiggle room kind of going around. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this was knit in Kelborn Woolens. I used 7 skeins. I used 666 grams, so only about a little less than half of my final of the 7th skein. So I probably would have had enough to do the pockets. And then for all of my bind offs, I did do a tubular bind off because it was all 1 by 1. And I didn't have any problems with, even though this was a woolen spun, I know sometimes people have problems with like the woolen spun breaking during a tubular bind off, but I don't pull that tightly, so I didn't have any problems at all with this breaking. And then throughout the cardigan, I just split spliced all of it together. I had very minimal ends at the end to weave in. And then I really love this shoulder detail. This just happens from your increases. And yeah, I'm excited I cast this on. I started it December 29th and finished it sometime in March. I didn't update my project page exactly the day that I finished it because it's that hard decision of when it's on the blocking mat, is that when it's finished? I usually block pretty quickly after like weaving in all my ends, but then I waited like another week to sew on the buttons. So, and then I just forgot to update the project page. But yeah, I have worn this since it's been about a month and I've enjoyed wearing it. So I do recommend this pattern. I really like that Ozetta list, like when you are knitting the armhole, she doesn't just say just like knit this many rows. She specifically says like knit to this many inches, and I like that. And then the same with the body, like knit to this many inches before starting the short rows at the bottom. I much prefer patterns that do that because sometimes it's hard to get row gauge. And yeah. So December 29th through mid-March, that's about a 2.5 month project, and very happy with it. So I would recommend this pattern, and I think a woolen spun yarn is a good way to go with this because for 666 grams it could be pretty heavy, but it's nice, lightweight, and drapey with this woolen spun yarn. So as I mentioned when I first started talking about the Miles shirt jacket, that is my only finished object that I have to share since my last video. So before we move into works in progress, I thought I would just do a little bit of my stash stats, how my year is looking, because my goal for the year is to use more of my stash than what I bring in. Specifically, I would like to use about 1.5 to 2 times more out than in. And I count this mostly on skeins. I have started doing a little more tracking with my grams, but skeins are kind of the main way for me to easily think in my head. So for March, I brought in 1 skein of yarn, and that was my Woolens and Nosh Club for the month. Out, I did get 7 skeins out, and that was for my Miles shirt jacket. And so month to date, that is a -6 skeins. And so year to date, I'm at a -22. Because throughout the year so far, I've only brought in my Woolens and Nosh Club each month, so that's been very good. However, I did place an order from Les Garçons. In March, it'll be arriving in April, so I do know that I have 8 skeins coming. So I've gotten 22 out, so if I want to use twice as much out, that would mean I have a yarn budget currently of 11 skeins. And I'm bringing 8 in, so that would bring my yarn budget to 3 skeins. So I'm still doing very good. And that's for the 2x out, not the 1.5 times. Gram-wise, I'm also doing very good. I got 130 grams in, 666 grams out for that Miles shirt jacket. I did destash 399 grams. That was of my hand spun that I showed in the last podcast. I did share it with my friend and she was very thrilled to take that hand spun off my hands. But I count my hand spun skeins separately from my bought skeins, commercial skeins. So overall, month to date, I'm at a -935 grams or negative 2,142. So with that anticipated 800 grams in, I'll be at a -1,300, which is good. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, I'm on track for my goals so far for the year, and we're about Is it crazy that it's April? So our first quarter of the year is done and we are in Q2 now, which does remind me, I do plan soon, because Q1 is done, winter's done, spring is coming. I was looking at my seasonal knitting plans and kind of re-looking at my plans, see if I needed to change anything. So if you would be interested in seeing like a review of like how my winter plans went and what my spring plans are, let me know, and I can make that a video. Otherwise, I'm kind of just planning for myself. But I'd love to share if you'd like to know. But with that, we'll just move right into my works in progress for all the things that I've been working on since the last episode. So since the last episode, I've had one project that has really consumed my brain, I guess is the best way to put it. So in my winter knitting plans, I had the idea to knit Shane a stick season sweater, which is by Rebecca Clow, same designer as the Staffin Cardigan. And I have this yarn. I'm just leaving the bus form here because we're going to use her again. I have this yarn, Brooklyn Tweed Imbue, in the colorway Boro. It is a worsted weight, worsted spun, super squishy merino yarn by Brooklyn Tweed. They come in 104 yard little skeins, so they're about 50 gram skeins. So I had a lot of these, and I originally had bought this for a sweater for Shane. I originally was going to do the gib for him, but then it was too much purling and I didn't want to do that. And so then I decided to swatch for the stick season for him. And so this is my swatch. And I really like the fabric. It's tight, but not too dense. You can see there's these little flecks that kind of come through. It's really nice. This yarn is very squishy. It did bloom nicely. But the thing is this was so off the gauge of the stick season. Because this is a worsted weight and the stick season is a DK. And I could have done the math, or I could have gone down a needle size, but then I thought this fabric would be very, very dense. And I didn't want it to be too dense. And he did mention I had done this, and I showed him the swatch, and he's like, did I pick that yarn? And I was like, well, I kind of picked it for you. I ordered it for a sweater for you. So with all of that, that is why I have an order coming from Les Garçons. I kind of showed him the Les Garçons DK choices and the Sonder yarn. Sunday morning DK, let him look at the colors. I let him pick a color. He ended up going with the Les Garçons yarn. And so then I had this swatch for a sweater and a gauge that I kind of like. I believe it was 15 stitches per inch, or over 4 inches. Let me look. So what I ended up doing is I did a Ravelry search for a sweater with the gauge that I had in this yarn. And when I did that, I stumbled upon a sweater that I've been wanting to make for myself. But it wasn't necessarily in wasn't in my queue for the year, but it's a sweater that I've seen a lot of times that I wanted to make. So this was 16 stitches over 4 inches, so 4 stitches per inch. So I just put that into Ravelry. Category, sweater, gauge, 16 stitches. And I just started scrolling through. And then I stumbled upon the Eun Sweater, which is a pattern by Anne Sunday. And I decided I was going to make this. And I cast it on. And I've been having such a great time making this sweater. I think it is so cute. And I've made a lot of progress. So this is where it's at. Ooh, it is a navy blue. So this is a sweater with a giant ribbing split hem. I'm gonna pop it on our mannequin friend here. It looks black in the camera. I'm so excited about this sweater. So it is a worsted weight sweater, 16 stitch gauge. I'm knitting this on a US 7 for the body, and then for this collar ribbing and then for the cuff ribbing, I'm going to go down to a US 6. This sweater does have this giant section of ribbing here at the bottom, and all of that you still use your main fabric needle, so I use the US 7 for that. I am doing the size 5. I had debated between doing the size 4 or 5 because everything is basically the same up until one point because it's a raglan increase. And then for the size 4, you split for your sleeves, but it's got compound shaping for the size 5, you keep the same amount of sleeve stitches, but then you do a few more in the round body stitches, raglan increases, so then you have a little bit more room on the front and the back. So I got to the size 4, tried it on, and I was like, I probably could use a few more increases, so then I continued on with the size 5. I did do a slight modification where it has this raglan detail, and then I just continued the detail down the side, so that did end up changing my ribbing here at the bottom, but essentially I just had one slip stitch and then started the ribbing to continue this all the way down. So I just kept that purl and knit column together the whole way. So I have finished the front and the back. When I cast this on, I did not cast on the collar. I cast on after the collar, and then I've gone back and knit the collar. This is supposed to be a folded down collar. Right now it looks like a little bit of a turtleneck, but I haven't tried it on yet to see. I'm kind of on the fence. Like I might do it as a turtleneck. I might do it as a folded collar. I might not want the folded collar, and so then I might just rip back and bind off. The pattern does call for a tubular bind off, but I don't like how a tubular bind off looks in 2x2 rib. I don't like that little cable. I don't think it looks as good. So I just did a standard bind off in pattern. So I would knit 1, knit 2, pass one over, purl the next stitch, pass it over, purl the next stitch, pass it over, knit the next stitch. So I stayed in that 2x2 rib and then just did the pass one over. And then I have gone and started my sleeves. So I have finished the sleeve decreases on the first sleeve, and then you have a giant section of 2x2 collar kind of at the end. It's a looser collar, and so what I've done is I've done all the sleeve decreases in the stockinette on the one side, and then I'm going to go back on this side and do all the stockinette, and then that way I can see how far I want the cuffs to be. I did end up shortening this ribbing here by a little bit. I knit to about 8 inches and it called for about 10, but I think 2 inches more would have been a little too long. I can't always go back. It says this isn't a tubular bind off and it's like a standard bind off. It would be very easy to unpick if I do decide I want to add more length. And it is cinching in a lot, but with blocking, this ribbing will just really relax out. And I like that this high slit here kind of lands right at the waist. So I do have this on bar record so I can try it on for you. So I figured I would do that so we can see how it fits together. I haven't tried it on since I've added the collar or started this sleeve. So it'll be a little bit of seeing how it fits together. So this is how it's fitting so far. So this is kind of where it hits my waist. Right here is where the split is. And that's about the same spot as my natural waist. So I think that's very nice. I do not think I will be keeping this as a turtleneck. So kind of folding that collar down. That's kind of what that'll look like. I'm a little surprised on how far this sleeve is right now. Like that's going to be a lot of ribbing, but I guess it's going to kind of mirror that bottom bit. Yeah, so it's going to be similar ribbing to this bottom section. But I think it's fitting really well, and I'll say this bottom bit is probably going to, you know, do like that total. I did add bust darts to the top, so I think my front and back are pretty level looking in the little viewfinder. And that's where I'm at. This has been a pretty quick project since it's on 16 stitch gauge, 4 stitches per inch. It's gone very quickly. And then you can see this is the raglan detail. So you have like a purl knit 2 and a purl 2. And then I tried to continue that when I picked up the collar. And you can see I continued it. Let's show you this side. Continued it down the side and into the ribbing here. So yeah, I'm very excited with how this is fitting. I think that folded over collar is going to look nice. Since it's a thicker yarn, I thought sometimes the folded collar I think is kind of puffy, but I think because it's a thicker weight yarn, it might be nice. Sometimes I don't like when they like stick up, but I think that looks cute. It looks kind of funny right now with like my half sleeve and my no sleeve, but I think it's going to be a cute sweater. So that is my Eun sweater that I've started early March. Now we're in early April, and I've done a good amount of work on it. So one more sleeve and then lots of ribbing to do, and we're done. So far I have used, let's look. So these are 50-gram skeins. Here are all my ball bands. So I've used I'm on my 10th skein total. I have 7 more to go. So I think I will have plenty. And I'm very excited with this. I think it's cute. So that is my Eun sweater. And I'll probably just take it off now. Oh, it's a cute. Yay! So just before we move on from the Eun sweater, I did look in the mirror a little bit before taking it off. Just because it's hard to see in this little camera. I am really liking how it fits. I am a little undecided on the collar. Just because that little fake fold right now is kind of giving it that funnel kind of look. I like when a collar like lays flat like this. And this one feels a little stand-up-y right now. I don't know with blocking, maybe it'll lay a bit flatter. So we might see. Maybe I'll go back and not do a folded collar just so that it might lay a little flatter. Maybe I'll make it a little shorter. Maybe with the sleeve, once I have the second sleeve on, maybe it'll pull down a little bit. So I'm undecided on the collar. I'll probably end up knitting the sleeves, blocking it, trying it on, and we'll see how it goes. Because then at least the ribbing will be blocked, and then I can kind of make a more informed decision on if I want to do a folded collar or just a standard collar. But I do think this is going to be a really nice fall, wintry kind of sweater. It is worsted spun, worsted weight, and it's a merino, and it's very soft. It's very squishy. It is going to be very heavy and very warm, I think. So, ooh, I'm losing a few stitches from my barber cord. So I do think it's definitely going to be a winter sweater. It might be a little bit of a sweatshirt, might be a little bit of a stretch for a sweatshirt. I do think the ribbing on the bottom is very flattering, which is why it was something I wanted to make. I really like the high split hem. I think it's cute. Sorry, I'm just going to keep picking these stitches back on my barber cord while we chat. And yeah, it was nice that I was able to just find a pattern of something that I wanted to make after doing a swatch. Sometimes that's nice, so then you don't have to like think of like, sometimes swatching and when you have an idea in your head and then the swatch doesn't always work out and the, you know, the yarn just, I think Jonna from Knit Together with Kim and Jonna says, you know, sometimes the yarn and a pattern don't make a baby. So it's nice when that doesn't work out and you can find something else. But this has been a really enjoyable knit. I also really wanted a raglan on my sweater, on my needles, so finding this was really nice to do. So those are kind of my final thoughts on my Eun sweater so far. So maybe we can just stay on the sweater train while I'm here. This is the last sweater that I have on my needles right now. And so this is the Sunset Sweater by Jessie Made Designs. I started this because about a week or so ago, we did a family trip back to North Carolina. North Carolina is where I grew up and it's where my parents still live. So I wanted to make sure I had a decent amount of knitting for that trip. We ended up renting a beach house, stayed by the beach for about 5 days. And it was really nice. It was very relaxing. Got a good amount of knitting done. We did do a puzzle too. So not a ton of knitting, but still a good amount. So I did start the Sunset Sweater, which is a pattern by Jessie Made. It's a worsted weight drop shoulder sweater design. And it's something that I've had on my list to make since last, when is flock? August. So I ended up buying Fiber Hustle Targhee in the colorway 4077 in this mint color. It's their worsted Targhee base. It's been a dream to knit with. So before the trip I did my swatches. I actually have two. So I have my first one and my second. The first swatch that I did was a little looser than the gauge. So that I ended up going down a needle size, and I did hit gauge going down a needle size. However, I just found the slightly looser fabric to be just a little more drapey. The tighter one, although it hit gauge, it feels really stiff and it feels like it could like stand up. It does drape when you like fold it in half this way, but like trying to like bend it this way, I just felt like there's a lot of resistance. I felt like it could be kind of stiff. So I ended up going with the slightly looser gauge, but it has a little more drape. Since this is a sweatshirt, I didn't want it to be so stiff. And so I cast this on before my trip. I like did the short row shaping at the top. And then I had some like back and forth knitting to do because it's a drop shoulder again. So it's very similar to the Miles shirt jacket. And while we're chatting, I'm just putting it on some tried on tubing so we can try it on. So you knit back and forth your back panel. You do have some short row shaping at the collar, and then you knit flat for a little while and then some increases, and then you do the same on the front. So then you pick up your left shoulder, do some short row shaping, knit down, do some increases. So when we were leaving on the trip, I was kind of on the increases section, and so that's what I kind of worked on in the airport and on the plane. It was pretty easy because it was back and forth for a good chunk and just increases. I think on the way there I was doing the flat knitting and the increases on the back panel. So it was very, very early. And then on the way I ended up picking up the shoulder stitches and doing the increases for that in the Airbnb in the time that we were there. And then by the time we were flying back, I actually, before I joined in the round, I because you have the back section and then the front section and your head hole, I put it on before I put it on in the round on the plane to see if I was ready to start my bust darts, and I was. So then on the plane, I joined in the round, knit the bust darts, and then it's just been stocking in the round since then. So I have not done like an actual try on since it's been in the round at all yet. So this will be the first try on for that. As I mentioned, I did do bust darts, but Jessie Maid has bust darts listed in the pattern, so I didn't have to do any of my individual math, although it was very similar to how I do short row bust darts. I did do the size 2 bust darts, which I think in Jessie's pattern added 6 stitches total, so about 1.5 inches, which is about what I typically add. I usually add between 1.5 to 2 inches when I add bust darts, because my full bust is a 48 and my upper bust is about a 42, so it's about a 6-inch difference. So I could add 2 inches, but it's usually anywhere from 1.5 to 2, depending on the gauge of the yarn. So I've just got it on my barber cord at the bottom. So you can see, so yeah, you start at the back and you do this neck shaping here. I will say I am a little concerned because you can see it's kind of doing this weird bulb. It's not exactly laying flat right now with where the short rows are. If I pull it, it's a little flatter, but it does have a slight bump at the moment that I'm a little concerned about, but I'm wondering with blocking and then the weight of the collar, maybe it'll stretch it out. But yeah, it is definitely doing this weird like bump right now. I'm not sure. Before I go much farther, maybe I'll try on that, maybe I'll come back and knit that collar just to see if that resolves any, because I'd hate to get all the way to the end and then this not resolve and then it look funny. So yeah. So yeah, you knit that, do the short rows, knit the back, and then you can see here, that's the knit flat, and then there's some increases here at the bottom. I will say, like on the screen it looks really stripy, but I think like the variation in this is really pretty. And so then you come back, you do the same on the front, you join across, knit down, and then there. This is a hand-dyed yarn. I'm not alternating skeins, but when I was ready to switch skeins, I was still knitting flat at that point, so I would knit 2 rows with one skein, knit 2 rows with the next skein, until I ran out of the first skein. And that happened somewhere along this front section. And I don't think there's like a drastic change. So that is what it looks like. So I figured we could try it on. This is why I wore this tank top and a cardigan today, because I knew I was going to have a lot of things to try on. And so the cardigan is easy to put on and off, and the tank top is good to have for these try-ons. So for this pattern, I am doing a size 4 again. With my gauge, it should be roughly a 54-inch circumference, which is very close to what my traveler hoodie is, and I really like that. It's an oversized drop shoulder hoodie, and so it has a similar shape to this. So this is what this looks like so far. I think this is nice that it kind of sits on the top of your shoulder. I'll have a little bit, but then I think with the shaping it kind of comes underneath. So yeah. Is this neck thing bulging? I can't tell. I'll probably look in the mirror in a little bit. So this is kind of what this is looking like. It is a little snugger right now. I do think it'll grow and relax just a smidge with blocking. I did take pre and post blocking measurements, and I do think this is a little more dense than what it will be. But I really like the color. I think this is really cute. And so now that I've joined in the round It's basically just stockinette until I am done. It'll be stockinette and then ribbing at the bottom and then stockinette sleeves. It is supposed to be cropped. I don't know exactly how long I'm going to knit it right now. I do think I bought an extra skein when buying for this, so I do have a little bit of wiggle room. But I think right now I think the shape here all fits really nicely. And yeah, my main thing is I'm gonna go check this collar in the mirror to see if it's bulging. I think it might be a little bit, but I think it's less so than it was when it's flat. I mean, obviously I think that's something when you're knitting, your fabric's not on something. So the shaping might look a little weird when you're knitting it, but then once it's on a body, it's like, oh, that looks normal. That fits a body. So yeah, this is my sunset sweatshirt. It's been great to work with. My gauge is 17 stitches. The pattern called for 18 over those 4 inches. And like I said, I opted to do it a little bit looser. I am doing that, the recommended ease should be about 54 inches. It looks really tight right now, but I do think it's going to grow. This, I do remember this bloomed quite a bit. I wonder if I have the pre-blocking measurements. I just have a little note app on my phone and I take a picture of the swatch and then I write down my little measurements. Let's see. So this is kind of what my text note looks like. I take a little picture. I have what it was, US 7. So pre-blocking, it was at 19 stitches. And then post-blocking, it was the 18 stitches. So yeah, it's gonna grow about an inch. So pre-blocking was 19 stitches. I'm at about 18 now. But when I measured, it was about 17. I'll have to remeasure. But anyway, I know it's gonna work. I'm gonna hit the right size. I think. I'm gonna double check because I thought I was at 17 stitches and not 18. So if anything, it just might be a little less oversized than I anticipated, but I do think it's fitting really nicely up here. The only note I have so far about this sunset sweatshirt pattern, and it's kind of my note in general with Jessie made patterns, because I had started the mini mock neck tank, and so this is my second pattern that I've kind of started with their designs. And when you're knitting like this armhole opening, it says like repeat for 24 rounds. It's not like repeat until 6 inches and then start the increases. It's like 26 rounds. So you have to make sure that your row gauge matches. Or what I did is I have to look at the row gauge of the gauge and go, okay, if they're getting, say it's 28 stitches or 28 rounds is 4 inches. And so if it says make sure you knit to 28 rounds, you have to like do the math. Okay, it's like, okay, their row gauge is this. The pattern wants me to knit this many rounds, and that equals how many inches? 4. Because my row gauge was different, I did have to like do that math to check of like, okay, they want me to knit to this many rows with their gauge. That would equal this many inches. How many rows is that with my gauge? Or I could just measure, you know, be like, okay, I'm supposed to knit to 6 inches. I'm not at 6 inches yet. Let me add a few more rounds. I think it ended up only being, with my row gauge difference and this length, it was only going to be like 1 additional row. So I ended up not doing it because I was knitting flat. I would have had to add an even number. But that is something to note. And that is something that does bug me a little bit. Obviously, it's easy to figure out, but in the grand scheme of things where it's like, I just need to know how long I need to knit flat before I start the shaping. I think it's supposed to be an easy thing for newer knitters, just be like, oh, knit this many rows. But I would much rather knit to a length versus having to keep track of my exact number of rows. I think that's kind of a personal thing, but that is a note if you are like me and like to knit to a certain measurement. you have to do that math or find a different pattern. So yeah. But this is my sunset sweatshirt so far. It is interesting though. There's no measurement here. It's listed in rows. But then for the body, they do say knit until it's this long. So my battery died during my little measurement chat. But I think you get the idea. Where if you like measurements, you have to do the math because they're not in the pattern. But it's not the biggest deal in the world. But after my battery died, I did go look in the mirror. And so I can still see these little ripples happening a little bit. You can kind of see it. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to see. They're still happening a little bit even when I wear it. So I think what my plan to do with this is I'm just going to block it because I'm on the barber cords now. I'm going to block it. I'm going to see how it goes. Also because I'm a little like unsure of how my gauge is going. Maybe my gauge changed a little bit. When I do knit flat, I do go down a needle size because my pearls are looser, and I didn't swatch that way. I only swatched in the round. So since I'm kind of at a good point, I've joined in the round, I'm curious to see. I'm just going to block it. I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to see if that relaxes these little short rows that are kind of funky. It's not like the biggest thing when I was wearing it. Like I'm noticing it because I'm staring at it. But that way I can kind of see how that progresses. And if this blocks a little bit wider, see how it goes. Because if anything, I can start over or find a different drop shoulder pattern if I'm not in love with this shoulder shaping. I mean, it's a crew neck drop shoulder sweater. I can find another one if I'm not 100% in love with how this shaping is working out for me. So I have really enjoyed it. It kept me busy on my trip. I think the targy of the yarn is really, really nice. So I definitely want a sweater in it, and I really like the color. I think this is a color for me. So that's kind of the plan. I'm going to block this today after I'm done with you, and we'll see how it goes. I am on my second skein, and I have about this much left of that. So because this is a non-superwash, I'm just going to break it for when I block, and then I just split splice it together. Although when I was alternating skeins, I obviously couldn't split splice, so I have extra ends to weave in. But honestly, the skein to skein is pretty similar, so I don't know if I even need to alternate. I'm obviously not alternating the whole way through. I'm just alternating kind of in those skein transition points. So that is my sunset sweatshirt, kind of how I'm feeling about it too. And we'll see. I'm going to block it today. I'll probably post some updates on Instagram, and then I'll give you an update in the next episode. But those are all of my garments that I'm working on right now. So then I do have a few accessories to kind of chat about, and then we'll be done for today's video. So the other project that I took to North Carolina is I took a sweater and then I took a pair of socks. That felt like a good amount of knitting for 5 days. I had plenty of knitting. Because I really didn't knit that much. I think I knit on these socks. They're in a Mountain State Stitches bag, the carrots. I think they're very cute. I knit on these when we went to the aquarium and when we went out to dinner. And then I worked on the sweater mostly at home. So these are some vanilla socks for myself. I am using my Woolens and Nosh yarn from, I think this is the January Club. Here it is. So this is the label. It is the colorway from January called If Hibernating is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right. I have been using the two little yarn cozies, and I've made good progress. So these have been my work knitting, out and about knitting. So they're going a little slower, but that's kind of how I want my socks to be this year. Just kind of on the side when I need them. So I started these after I finished Shane's Advent socks. And this is where I'm at. So I copied Kevin from Needles at the Ready, who copied Mari from the Colorado Knitter, who's using Summer Lee's. Essentially, I'm doing a 2x1 rib. So I normally do a 56 stitch sock, so I cast on 57 stitches, 1 stitch extra, in order to get a multiple of 3 to do that 2x1. And then I just decrease 1 stitch when I start my contrast colors. I start at a color change and then I just knit down. I did a slip stitch heel flap because I've found that these do fit me better. I prefer knitting a shadow wrap heel, but I have high arches, and so sometimes those just literally, they'll like twist on my foot. So I have found that a heel flap and a square heel is my preferred. So this has a little more room in the back than like a triangle heel turn. And then I've finished the gusset decreases on this one. And so the cuff and the heel flap are in the contrast color that comes with this, it's a sock set. And so the second sock, I have done the same, 15 rounds of that 2x1. And then I did finish this heel flap yesterday. I had started the heel flap in North Carolina, but I didn't get very far. And then I ended up having to take Sherlock to the vet earlier this week. Nothing major, he just has his hip was bothering him. We don't know if he has arthritis, or he stayed with my friend when we were in North Carolina, and they have 3 flights of stairs, and so I think the extra stairs bothered his hip a little bit. So we had to go get him some doggy Tylenol. He's doing much better now. He's very happy. We're supposed to like prevent him from jumping, but now that he's on the Tylenol, he's like, I feel no pain, and it's impossible to keep him from jumping. And all that to say is, I worked on the heel flap at the vet while we were waiting on his blood work. But then I finished that heel flap yesterday, and so now it is on the gusset decreases. So this one will be, these will both be great for my meetings for the upcoming week. So I really love this colorway. I think it's so beautiful, and the Woolens and Nosh sock base is a Targhee nylon blend, and with my Targhee sweater and this, I'm just really loving Targhee. It's just got, it's more rustic than the merino for sure. Like the merino is like soft and squishy, but this just like has a little bit of tooth to it, but still soft, but like it's gonna last. And my husband, who is very knitworthy, wears his socks to death. Wears holes in them so quickly. Not quickly, he wears holes in them after about 2 years of continuous wear, and that's been the merino socks. And so I think these more hard wearing wools are just a little bit better in the long term. So I'm very excited about these. I'm loving this base, and I love this color. So those are my January Woolens and Nosh colors. So then I have one more kind of on the go knitting project, because my hood has gotten very minimal work, so I'm not even going to show that today. So I have one more on the go project, and this is an Oslo hat that I am knitting for my mom. As I mentioned, my mom lives in North Carolina, and it does not get super cold in North Carolina, but she wanted a red fuzzy hat to match her red plaid fuzzy scarf. So I started the Oslo hat, and this is where I am at. I am modifying it just a smidge. So typically with the Oslo hat, you do your folded collar. Not a collar. What is this? It's not a cuff on a hat, a brim. You do a folded brim, and then you knit a little bit, do a short row, so then you have a 3-layer folded brim. I did not do that short row. I knit my stitches to my cast on stitches, so I do have a double layer brim down here, but that's it. I'm not doing a third brim, a third layer, because she lives in North Carolina. This is already going to be a very warm hat, It is Knit Picks Palette and then Knit Picks Aloft. One is Salsa Heather and one is Tomato. I think the Salsa Heather is the Aloft. Yeah, Tomato is the palette. So that's 100% Peruvian Highland wool. And then Aloft is Salsa Heather, which is a lace weight silk and mohair blend. This is what they look like separate and then together. Yeah, I'm not doing the third brim, but I think this will still be really nice. I did about 6 inches, so it's a 3-inch brim. So I'm like kind of doing the Oslo hat, but not. I'll essentially just knit this to the length that it needs to be and then start the decreases. So it's now spring. It was lovely, the weather when we went back to North Carolina. It was like 70s as like the high, but it's just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. So I already asked my mom, I was like, you probably don't want this right now, right? And she was like, I don't need it until the fall. So this has just become my car knitting. I leave this in our one car that we drive the most, in the console in the middle. So then if whenever Shane's driving, because he drives more than I do, I can knit on this while he drives. If we go to dinner and I don't have another project that's at a good point, I have this because it's just stocking it in the round. If we go to a movie, this is here. So it's kind of just my backup knitting that I low priority at the moment. I literally leave it in the car. I brought it inside today so that I could show it to you, and it will be going back in the car. And with that, I have one more work in progress, and that's my final one. So I've mentioned we went to North Carolina. We were there with my parents, my stepdad, my brother, and my aunt and uncle. And so my aunt has seen my knitting. She talks to people about my knitting. And she, you know, mentioned like, oh, if you ever want to make me something. And I will gift knit for people, but I will gift knit for people when they ask. If someone asks for something, that means they probably want it. And that's kind of my philosophy. I always like to know that someone actually wants what I'm going to make for them, that I'm going to spend hours making. So she mentioned like, oh, you know, like a shawl in the color red would be really nice. So when I came home, I went looking in my stash. I've also been kind of like wanting a shawl. So actually what I did first is I went on Ravelry and I was just looking through shawls. And then I stumbled across the Amren shawl by Joji Locatelli. It's a 1 skein fingering weight shawl. And I saw it and I immediately thought of my aunt. And I was like, I think she would like this. So then I went looking in my stash to see, do I have a skein of red? So then I did find a skein. I sent her a picture of the skein. I sent her a picture of the shawl and I was like, I was thinking of you. I know you mentioned red. What do you and I sent both and she was like, oh, that is gorgeous. I love red. And so I was like, great. I just like to check with people before I start working on something. Because I just want to know they're going to like what I make. Surprises are nice if you already know what they like. I like to just check beforehand. So that's kind of my philosophy. So she knows she's getting this and I've started this, but I went stash diving and so I pulled out one of my Les Garçons sock sets. Wow, that's like really shaky. That was weird. I'm using the Yak sock base and it's the colorway Mysterious Squirrel. So it's 70% superwash wool, 20% yak, and 10% nylon. Joji, like very specifically, is like you need a skein that's closer to like the 440 yards per 100 grams, not a 400 yard. So this one hit that mark. It also came with a mini skein and this little pattern has little tiny tassels. So I was thinking I might do the tassels in the contrast color, but this is the color. It's this really gorgeous red. And I don't really use red for myself. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to use a skein of yarn for someone that will love it. And so this is where it's at so far. So this pattern has, it's garter stitch and then these lace panels total. and then little tiny tassels if you want them. So that's kind of the lace. And then I just did a short row section, and then I'm on plain garter right now. I did go down on needle size. It's written for a US 5. I just went down to a US 4. I did not do a swatch, but I'm notoriously a loose knitter, and since this is a like use all the yarn kind of project, I figured it'd be better safe to go down needle size just to make sure. And yeah, I started this 2 nights ago, and I have restarted it. This is my 3rd cast on. So the first time I cast it on, I was working on it, and I realized I made a few mistakes. I did the first lace section, and I didn't use stitch markers to kind of mark the different lace sections. It's only like a 6 stitch repeat for this lace. It is not a hard lace, but I messed it up. And it makes these like circles. Do you see? Yeah, the circles. And I did not have circles. And I was like, is this gonna bother me? And I was like, But then the other thing I noticed is when you get to the lace, it specifically says, because you're slipping this first stitch, and in this first section here, you're also slipping it, but it just says slip. So I slip purlwise. But I do so many projects like my jelly roll specifically, where you slip one with the yarn in front when you get to the edge, because it makes that really tidy like pickup stitch. But this pattern, you're supposed to be, when you get to the lace, it specifically says slip one with yarn in back. So then I switched to doing it that way, and I could tell a difference. And because you're not picking up this edge stitch, when you slip it in the back, it kind of keeps your knit, like your garter edge. Anyway, I didn't like how it looked. I messed up my lace and I was slipping wrong. So then I ripped out and I started over. Did the lace, got to the short rows, and I was like, this is making like a weird point, you know? Like right now, it's a very nice like edge. But what I had done is you do this first section, and then there's like one line that says like knit back. So then you're on the right side when you start your lace. And when I did it that time, I started on the wrong side with my lace. So then when I did the short rows, it did this like, it literally looked like a weird point because my lace was on the wrong side. So for that one, I didn't rip out completely. I did tink back past the lace, put it in, knit that extra row, and then knit the lace. The 2 times that I did re-knit the lace, I did use stitch markers to mark each lace repeat. This has been very helpful. I will be doing that throughout the project. There is like a slip 2, knit 1, pass over kind of stitch where it does cross the stitch markers, but it's 1 row of like an 8-row repeat, and it's 1 stitch that does that, and it's not that annoying. And I'd rather have my lace look right than get to the end of it and be like, oh wow, that looks really wrong. And I know lifelines, this one was so small and so close to the beginning, I wasn't worried about a lifeline. But once I finish like this garter section and I go into the next lace section, I will, if I am not lazy, put in a lifeline. I should just grab an embroidery floss right now and put it in the bag. Currently this is not in a bag because I just cast it on. But yes, future Kristen, you will be putting a lifeline in before you do the lace, and don't have a future podcast where you cut back to this and then you're like, oh, I didn't do that and I messed up. So, okay. Thanks, future Kristen. So then this is the mini that comes with it. It's this really gorgeous brown. And so I'm thinking like maybe I'll do the little tassels in this. I think that might be cute. But we'll see. I'm not a tassel person, but my aunt is for sure. So that is my Amren shawl. It's fun. It is definitely going to be a at-home only project. Because the short rows you have to like count, and the lace you have to count, and then the garter bumps you have to count. So it's just gonna be an at-home project, and I'll finish it when I finish it. But I'm very excited to be using it for someone that really loves red. So that is that shawl. And that is everything. And I've been talking for a very long time. So if you have stuck to the end, I thank you for hanging out with me. If you've come back, thank you for just coming back and hanging out with me in general. I hope this provided a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of company while you were knitting or making or doing something today. I have not done any spinning over the last month, and that's where, like, doing this a month apart, I was like, oh, I really have not, I did not spin. I finished that last spin and I have not started a new one. So that is something I do want to do a little bit more of throughout April. I did pull my double treadle out into the living room. So I think that just being out more in the open will be a little more enticing, encouraging, reminding. I'm definitely someone that I need reminders. So I think I might go looking through my fiber stash today, see if there's something that's calling to me. I think I'm just going to do a single skein, 4-ounce spin, nothing crazy, no combo spin. Just play with some color. And then I haven't touched my embroidery either. So I have a couple things bouncing around, but as I mentioned, the puzzles have really been scratching an itch lately. So, you know, we're doing what we can. Yeah, I'm hoping to record, probably moving maybe a little closer back to my 2-week schedule. Sometimes the month schedule has just felt like it almost feels a little too daunting because I can't exactly remember what I chatted with you about the last time, and so then I had to think really hard, and then I almost feel like a month's a little too long for me. So maybe we'll move back to about a 2, maybe a 3-week schedule just to keep me feeling a little fresh. I still want to show you things that I'm working on, but I want to make sure I have enough content between. But like working on this Eun sweater, you hadn't seen it before today and it's almost done. So I think maybe a little more updates throughout the project process would be nice for me and for you. So that's kind of my thoughts going into April. The weather is definitely turning a little nicer here, so I do expect a little bit of, you know, my free weekend time, maybe a little more hiking outside, just enjoying the outdoors a little bit more. So I think that's why my like hood hasn't had a lot of work, because it has mohair and I just definitely not liking the mohair in the summer, and I just, you know, I'm definitely feeling a little lighter weight garments right now. But that's kind of where I'm at mentally, where I'm at with my making and just in general. And I just want to say thank you for hanging out with me. Sorry that got a little rambly here at the end. Sometimes it's just nice to kind of chat through some of the thoughts that are swimming around in my head about like future projects and whatnot. But yeah, if you'd like to see a spring plans kind of video, kind of what I'm thinking for that, let me know. Otherwise, I hope to record another podcast a little sooner than a month. And I hope this just kept you company. Thank you. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see future videos of mine and help me find other knitters out there as well. I hope you put a little bit of stitch into every love. I hope you put a little bit of love into every stitch of your making, and I'll see you guys again very soon.